All right, outdoorsmen, here we are today at Fort Frederick State Park in Maryland. Have a state employee working back there digging a hole to put some more signs in. Excited to get out and see what this state park has to offer, so let's get outdoors. Here we are in the visitor center. You can see, let me slide back a little bit. You can see the typical attire of people in the 1700s, including our native First People friends here. Everything from beadwork. They have other artifacts that are found with a timeline as well. So they have a very cool visitor center here, and I would highly recommend that you come out here and check it out. So I think we're done inside and it's time to get outdoors. Well, at first glance, this is a pretty darn impressive structure, considering it was built in the 1700s. We are at one of the sides. We are actually facing south. There have been a couple other buildings built outside the fort. Obviously, porta potties was not here in the 1700s, so let's get out and explore and see what we can find. All right, outdoorsmen, here we are at the gate of Fort Frederick. We're gonna go ahead and turn around, and as you can see, there is quite an expanse of cleared land here, and at this point we are facing south toward the river, and it would have been hard to sneak up and surprise someone having this much space, even though the land is undulating. Having a sentry who was paying attention could spot enemies coming from a long way away. Let's go check out inside. All right. We are going through these massive wood doors. They are double hung, so to speak. You have timbers going up and down, and then you also have timbers that are running 90 degrees to those, which would certainly have helped reinforce the doors. Definitely can hear a train coming up along the Potomac River. Ironically, as massive as it looks on the outside, in some ways it certainly feels small when you're on the inside. Let's go look around. The fort is actually open with folks doing period costume and actually doing reenactments. This certainly looks to be a smithing area, I believe. So we'll be back with another episode later in the summer when they actually have people here, and they'll have the barracks open as well. I feel a little lost not being able to see it at its full regal glory. The interesting thing about how this fort is built, that by having the corners extend significantly further and having them flare at the point there, if you were defending that point and it was becoming overrun, you could simply fall back along the wall this way or this way, and when the intruders came over the wall, they either had to come down into this massive space and be fired upon from both sides, or have a very small walkway that quickly would have been overcome with soldiers who were injured or killed as they're trying to make their way toward the defending army. Well, as much as I think no one would catch me, it does say keep out. So I'm going to follow the expectations and hopefully come back when it is open, that we can peek over the wall and see what's on the other side. Let's keep going. As we move across the parade grounds between the two barracks, I noticed that off in the distance there, it looks like it is a well. So let's slide over that way and see what we can see there. One of the most important things in any protective structure is to make sure that you have water to drink. You can go a long time without eating, but if you don't have water, it's not too long before you're in a position where you have to surrender. So having this well was a great way to be sure that you could defend the fort and hold on for a long time until reinforcements arrived. Here you can see the shingles from the bottom side, and how, although there are gaps between any two shingles in a row, with them being overlapped by the shingles above them, it creates a watertight surface to keep the soldiers dry. Looking out over the parade grounds, you can see a couple other guests on the other side there. And it is definitely hard to see, but at the peak, with not having the ability to form something over the peak itself, they just created shingles that came over at the peak and then allowed it not to leak at the very top of the roof. Although we're not able to get in, looking in through the window, you can see that there was a desk here, a bed off in the distance, some sort of a shelf or other unit there to put your personals on, and then a room or a door that would lead to the adjoining room. When you look at the windows and look at the panes themselves, you can see just how wavy they are, which shows that although it is solid, glass does move over extended periods of time. Here we have a hospital space, and you can see the utensils on the table, but it's hard to see what they are. This space would have been occupied by probably 3 either sick or injured soldiers, so interesting to see how they were cared for. Although they are rather rudimentary looking, the benches are quite comfortable. And you can see that there's a barrel here which would have allowed the men to get water to drink, to cook with if they were individually cooking, and certainly for them to be able to bathe with as time allowed. there you can see a cannon. So we're going to come down off of the upper deck of the barracks and go down and check that out a little more closely. Here you can see how they used wooden pegs to keep the floor or ceiling joist, however you want to look at it, in place. And you simply put a hole through the wood, slid the appendage through from the other side, and then took a big wooden dowel and drove it down through to hold it in place. They're a little hard to see, but these nails look like they were cut, and what the blacksmith would have done was drawn the metal out while it was still hot. He would have cut it and then pounded the end to put a head on the nail. Wasn't a whole lot of moving pieces to cannons back in the 1700s. The wheels moved, but aside from that, you would have come up here to the front, you would have pushed your powder in. From there, you would have used some cloth as a wad of some sort to keep the gases behind the cannonball, and then force the cannonball down the barrel of the cannon with the rod that's in the end. And then back here, there would have been a wick that you touched down through and to charge the powder, and the cannon would go off. This cabin was run as a store by Captain Wirt. So things that the soldiers needed, they could actually come here and use their pay to buy the things that made life a little easier here on the frontier. Just interestingly enough, this fort was also involved in the Civil War, and during that time it was owned by a former slave who had bought his own freedom. Well, his father had bought his freedom, and then he had bought freedom for his wife, and they were in possession of this place during the Civil War. So not only did they have this house that they lived in, but they also had created numerous outbuildings as well. Not only does Fort Frederick State Park have a lot to offer historically, but it also allows you to get outdoors and do other recreation. It's a great place to enter the big pool area where it has been kind of dammed up because of the C&O Canal, which you can see off in the distance there, and it allows people to get out and do some recreational fishing. Interesting thing is that you may not use a motor that is gas powered on this water. All right, outdoorsmen, wrapping up the trip to Fort Frederick State Park. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video footage and the learning that was there as far as what we saw on the in the fort itself. It was really cool. I'm really looking forward to getting back and sharing a little more of the human perspective when they have their folks there doing the live reenactments and all of the pieces that would go on within the fort itself. it was interesting to me to also learn that there were freed African Americans that actually owned that property for quite a while during the Civil War era, and it has taken a considerable amount of resources to restore the fort to what it was at one point. So there will be more videos around Fort Frederick, so until next time, get outdoors.